Sorry? Yeah. How's it going? Really good? Is that a 2-second answer or is that a I've thought about this answer? Big things. Who's travelled anywhere? Who's seen some big things that impress you? Yeah, I've seen some big things that impress me. Went to Barcelona, and there was a guy there by the name of Gordy, and he built these buildings, they're gaudy. But they're impressive. You know, there's caps on these buildings that look like ice cream cones and just amazing sorts of things. Go to Paris, you see the Eiffel Tower that was built just for an expo. You know, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Just listening to the story of the Statue of Liberty. How big is it? And it was a present from the Parisians to America. It's a pretty cool present. Take a while to unwrap. Big things made to make you go, wow, aren't they? I'm doing a lot of gardening, and in the landscaping scene, when you design a garden, you want something to make you go, wow. That's what most people want from their garden. You know, some people just want to grow veggies. I'd like my veggies to go, wow. I'm not very good as a veggie gardener. But people want things that go, wow. You know, I'm designing a garden so that when I walk outside or when I invite people around, they'll look at it and they'll go, wow. I'm about to start a job on Tuesday over about half an hour away from here. I went to visit on Friday, and it is a place that makes you go, wow. You know, the landscape has been all architecturally designed, and the house is, I've never seen anything quite so big. But it's there to make you go, wow. It's there to make, I don't know, to make the people who own it feel important. It's there for the person who designed it to get a name out there. It's all about drawing attention, isn't it? If I build something and you go, wow, I feel like, hey, see what I built. Well, here we go, is Nebuchadnezzar. And out in the plains, he's just built a tower. Well, he's built a statue. And the statue is 27 meters high. And it's 2.7 meters wide. And it's made out of what? It's made out of gold. Could you imagine that? You see the gold logies, you know, this is about this big. And they're probably not gold. I'm pretty sure they're not gold. But this is a statue that is 27 meters high. And it's 2.7 meters wide. And it is, whether it is solid gold or it is coated in gold, it is impressive. Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom is impressive. It is known in the history books as one of the greatest warriors. He's got this kingdom that stretches and covers the Persians and the Medes, and he's taken in all this massive kingdom. And he's building amazing things. And in the history books, they say his whole idea of his kingdom that he was building was to be one of the wonders of the world. And in many ways, it is one of the wonders of the world. The gardens of Babylon come from Babylon, funny enough. The gates, the walls, the arts, the culture. Everything about Babylon is impressive. And Nebuchadnezzar, that was his dream, that one day his place would be known worldwide as one of the spectacles, as one of the wonders of the world. And pretty well he achieved it. But Nebuchadnezzar has a mammoth kingdom. It's a very multicultural kingdom. It's a many multilingual kingdom. And what does he do when he takes in Israel? What's the first thing he does with the people of Israel? He takes them to Babylon, and then what does he do with the nobles? He teaches them. What does he teach them? Teaches them the language of the Babylonians. He teaches them the culture of the Babylonians. He gives them Babylonian names. He assimilates. Some rulers go out there and they annihilate. When they take over a city, they annihilate that city to get rid of the opposition. But Nebuchadnezzar is bigger than that. He doesn't go out to annihilate. He goes to make a bigger kingdom for himself, not just land-wise, but people-wise. He wants to take the best from this kingdom over here and bring them in and have them share with him whatever he can get out of those people. He wants to bring these mob over here and their culture and bring it over here and take the best out of it. He wants to bring the architectures from over there and bring them in and learn all about what they have so that he can create the biggest and the best kingdom. And he assimilates. He brings the people in. He changes their names into the Babylonian names. He teaches them the culture of the Babylonians. And here we have in the chapter 3, he knows that it's hard to bind all these people together. It is such a big kingdom. And there are people out there with different ideas and different gods and different notions as to deities. And he thinks, well, this is not going to gel. So what I need to do is bring all these things in as well. Let's bring the religions in. Let's build a tower that is mighty and awesome, and people will go, wow, look at that. What great king can build such a thing? And he brings them in, and the whole story is a fanfare. We have repetition of some of those words So what did Nebuchadnezzar do? He summons the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the provincial officials to come to the dedication of this great statue. And every time they mention it, they don't just say, and then they came. No. So the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the other provincial officials assembled for the dedication. And every time he mentions them, he mentions every single one of them. And Daniel does this because it is a fanfare. We're going to get the biggest and the best of my kingdom to come to this dedication of this statue that I've built. And then when all these satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials come to the dedication, the herald yells out and says, we're not just here to admire it. Not just here to say, oh, how nice. Not just here to say, oh, gee, that's worth a lot of money. If I just scratch my fingers through that and take that little bit of gold. No, what are you here for? When you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of music, you are to bow down and worship at the feet of this statue. So, when they heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of music, what did they do? They bowed down. And what's so special saying the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harps, the pipes, and all kinds of music? Because they're multicultural. They are the musical instruments of the many different cultures that are involved now in the city of Babylon. This is impressive. This is amazing. That the biggest and the best of the kingdom of Babylon will be present. And the music from every single one of their cultures will be there, and it will be heard. And when you hear it, you are to bow down and worship this statue of gold, because it is awesome. And the statue of gold replies by saying, because what is it? Statue of gold. I've never heard gold talk to me. It is a statue of gold. But Nebuchadnezzar knows, as part of his assimilating this kingdom, of bringing this kingdom and holding it together, that he must bring all these things into one, because it's too hard to rule a people of mixture of cultures and of religions and of ideas unless there is some sort of similarity between the whole lot. So let's stop the bickering and fighting between the Presbyterians and the Baptists and the Catholics and the Anglicans and the Babylonians and the whatevers and the this and that and all the rest. We'll bring them all into one. And we'll all have one thing in common that we can worship. Some of us do. That we bring together to worship and to serve. Now, there's a couple of people hanging out in the background here. And who are they? We call them astrologers or Chaldeans, who I think have got a bit in for the Judeans, because here we have Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Remember those three? From chapter 1, taken in as the noble group with Daniel to Babylon. And we read in chapter 2 how Daniel interpreted the dream of the king. Not just interpret it, but told him actually what it was and then interpret it. And then Daniel was put in a high position. And under Daniel's request, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were put into a high position as themselves, as administrators over Babylon. And so their position is owed pretty well to what Daniel has done. And here they are as administrators of Babylon. They would have been called in. They would have been called in with the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all other provincial officials to come to this great gathering, to bow down at the feet of this great statue. And so, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we haven't heard much more since chapter 2. We haven't heard any bad news. We haven't heard any good news. We haven't heard much of what they do pretty well. But it would appear that they served their king, because their king was in power. The king was put there by God in their own thoughts. Remember what we read in Romans chapter 13 last week? That all authority is God-given and is put there by God. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would have known that, just as Daniel knew that. Remember how Daniel spoke to the king? With a lot of respect. And so Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were happy to serve. Well, they were serving the king, and they were serving him with respect. And they were serving him as they would serve their God, because God has ordained all authority. And yet, they're picked up by the astrologers who say, good old Nebuchadnezzar, old king, live forever, live forever. Sorry to interrupt your grand procession here. But didn't you say that once we all hear the sounds of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of music, that we were to bow down at the feet of this great golden statue? And if we didn't bow down to the great golden statue and worship it and serve it, then we're going to be thrown into a fiery furnace? King, didn't we hear that? And the king says, well, yes, that's right. And he brings to our attention, there's three guys that you put into power over Babylon, that you put in as administrators over Babylon. They're not listening to you, king. They're not listening to what you say. And worse than that, they're not going to worship your idol, as you said to. The king was furious. Now, if you've picked up from the last couple of chapters, Nebuchadnezzar has a bit of an anger issue. Yeah? You just pick that up? Anyone seen Alice in Wonderland? It was on TV on Thursday or Friday or Saturday night. Queen of Hearts. I just saw my family walk in here. Gwendolyn, what does the Queen of Hearts say? Off with your heads! Off with your heads! Gwendolyn did this in the Wombat School musical last year, and one of the songs is, off with your heads, off with your heads, off with your heads. Mirabelle just runs around the house now saying, off with your heads, off with your heads, off with your heads. Remembers nothing else of the musical except for that one line. Off with your heads. That's Nebuchadnezzar. But he's not saying off with your heads. What does Nebuchadnezzar usually say? No, worse than that. Tear them apart, pull them into pieces, cut them up, chop them up, tear down the houses, turn into rubble. It was there in chapter 2, wasn't it? What was happening in chapter 2? He had this dream. He was worried about it. His magicians and seers and all that couldn't tell him what the dream was. He says, unless you tell me what it is, what am I going to do? I'm going to pull you apart. I'm going to cut you into pieces. I'm going to tear you up and throw you around, and I'm going to pull your houses down and turn them into rubble. Exactly the same thing as what Nebuchadnezzar says at the end of this chapter, if you have a look later on. He's got an anger problem because he's got a kingdom. He's got this massive responsibility. Babylon is humongous. It's very hard for one man to see whatever is going on everywhere, and that's why he has to employ or take over other nations and take the best men out of those and train them up to be his administrators and to be his whatever they may be over certain sections, because it is just too big for Nebuchadnezzar to do on his own. And so trying to deal with all this would just be a mammoth problem. I have 3 kids. That is a mammoth problem. No, she's all right. She's listening to what I say, so I've got to say that. But it is a mammoth responsibility. And so we see Nebuchadnezzar gets angry really quickly. You can't tell me what my dream was. Cut them up! Off with their heads! Into this chapter here. You won't bow down at the feet of my idol? Off with their heads! No, we're going to throw them in the fiery furnace. Gary would prefer that. Barbecue. And the astrologers bring these three fellas forward. And remember, Nebuchadnezzar has appointed these three into this position under the advisory of Daniel. And he says to them, I've heard a rumor, fellas, that you won't bow down to my idol and you won't serve him. Now, here's the chance. If you hear the sound, and I'll play it again, the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of music, covers your music. Your music's in there, your instruments are there. We haven't left you out. If you're happy to bow down to my golden idol, fantastic. That'll be good. Yeah, we'll put all this behind us. We can forget that it ever happened. She'll be right. We're back on our way. We're back on. My kingdom is back under control. I've put this in for the best purposes. These rules are here for the best reasons. I've got to hold this kingdom together. And if you don't pull the ropes, if you don't come along with me, then I've got to get rid of you. But I've got to get this back into alignment. So here we go. We're going to play these music again, and you're going to bow down, and that'll be great. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego don't bow down. What do they say? Nebuchadnezzar! We do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God who we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship this image of gold that you have set up. Does it sound like the words of three guys who are angry? Does it sound like the words of three guys who are like, no way, we're not going to do this? Who are trying to offend the king because the king has given an order they don't like? There's a lot of respect in those words. Well, that's what I picked up. There is a lot of respect in those words. They still realize that Nebuchadnezzar is an authority that has been ordained by God. And they respect him, and they serve him. But what they will not do is they will not serve his idol, and they will not worship his gods. Because although they are willing to serve the king, an authority placed by God, an idol is not an authority placed by God. They have but one God. One God. The God of Israel, Yahweh. And they say they will not serve any other God but that. What idols do you see in your life? What things out there make you go, wow? And then you spend a lot of time trying to achieve or duplicate or keep or hang on to in your life. What is it? Because this world has lots of wows. This world is always trying to wow us. Because it wants our attention, it wants our dollar, it wants our love, it wants our worship. And the three boys say, well, no. You've already taken everything else away from us. There is one thing that we will not allow you to take away from us. We will serve you, O King. We will do as you ask. We will be educated. We will learn the language. We will mingle with the people. We will administrate over Babylon. We will do what you ask us to do. But we will not bow down and worship at the God of any other God but Yahweh. We will not waste our time on gods like this, because our God is true, and our God can save us, and our God will save us. Did you see that? It doesn't just say our God can save us. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand. He will rescue us from your hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O King, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. What is your kingdom? What is the kingdom you're working towards? We all have ambitions in life. We would like a bigger house. We've got 3 kids in a 2-bedroom house. It's quite tight. But as I keep saying to my wife, the bigger the house is, the more you got to clean. I don't like that idea. You might like a better job. Fair enough. You might like to go on holidays. You might like to see some of these wonders of the world. Very good. But what do you serve first in your life? Is it the ambition? Is it the dream? Is it the holiday? Is it the perfect family? Or do you serve your God first and foremost? What will you sacrifice first? Will you sacrifice the thing that God wants you to do, or will you sacrifice what you want to do? Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego know fully well that this thing is beautiful. It is made of gold. It's a grand statue. It's very nice. It sparkles in the sun. It's out on the plains. There's no trees around it. There's no shade out of it. It's beautiful. But it's not worth worshipping. It's not worth serving. It is nothing. It is gold. But we have but one God. And Nebuchadnezzar's reaction is furious. How dare you? I'm trying to hold this kingdom together. And here you are. I've given you a grand position in my kingdom. And you still want to go against my word. And what does he do? He orders that the furnace is turned up 7 times hotter than it is. 7 times hotter. And that the strongest men in his army come and grab these fellas and tie them up. Don't get them changed. Tie them up and throw them into that fire. I will not have my kingdom ruined by you 3 men. This kingdom is to be held together. This is my kingdom. This is my name. This is my dream. And I will do whatever I need to hold this kingdom together. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego put up a fight? No, they don't. Because they're fully aware that their God is bigger. They've said it, that our God will save us. Whether he saves us from the flame or not, he will save us from your hand, O King Nebuchadnezzar. And so the strong men in the army, they pick these 3 guys up and they walk over that furnace and they realize that was not such a good idea. This furnace is very hot. And they fall down dead. And the 3 guys are thrown into the furnace. And the king goes, and my name shall reign. Sorted. Everyone out there see this? Because the procession's still going on. The people are still there. See this? You deny me, you go against my word, and this is what's going to happen to you. You mark my word that this idol, this statue here is going to be the God of our people. And hang on a second, what is going on over there? Didn't we just throw 3 blokes into that furnace? How come I see 4? And how come they're walking around and they're untied? The fire's hot, I know. There's 4 guards lying there and they're pretty crispy. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, come out! Come out! And they do. And the satraps and all those other people gather around. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stand before the people. And the hair a bit singed. And their arms a bit burnt. And the smell of smoke on their clothes. Nothing. Because their God is mighty and their God is true and their God isn't made of gold and their God doesn't just stand out there on the plain and reflect the sunlight nicely. Because their God is true. And their God is all-powerful and their God is almighty. And their God is God and is alive and is real and is all-powerful. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are presented before the king. And the king says to the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. And so Nebuchadnezzar sees that their God is powerful. And he sees that his statue out in the middle of the plain there pretty well doesn't even come in comparison to what has just happened before him. And you would think there would be a man who would fall down and worship that God. But remember, Nebuchadnezzar, he's got a big kingdom to look after. And what's he continue to say? Therefore I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be what? Off with their heads! Cut into pieces. And the houses turned into piles of rubble. For no other God can save in this way. And so what does Nebuchadnezzar do? I've got a kingdom to look after. It's very big. My God's not really doing much out there in the paddock at the moment. Let's get this God on board. Anyone says anything bad about him, we'll cut them up. He'd be a nice guy to have on your side, wouldn't he? These guys have been thrown in the fire. They've walked through the flame. They've come out the other side. They're brilliant. Wow, what a God. Is that how you see your God? Is he someone that you take on as another part? I've got big dreams to fulfill. I've got a job that I really want to get, you know. I'd love to go on that holiday and see those things over there. They're very good and they'd be nice to go and check out. My house needs to be bigger. I can't do it on my own. It'd be good to have a God like that on my side. How big is the kingdom you're building for yourself? What is the kingdom you're building for yourself? Are you building a kingdom for yourself? How big is your God? Just want to look at the three guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, brought into captivity along with Daniel. And there seems to be some sort of connection between the four guys. They seem to know each other. Because in chapter 2, when Daniel has to interpret the dream of the king, he calls on Shadrach, Meshach, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah to pray with him, to help him work out, to have God reveal this dream to them. So Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, I want to use their godly names. They're hanging out with Daniel and they see all that Daniel does. They see that Daniel is willing to ask that they don't eat the royal food off the table in chapter 1. We see that when Daniel's head is on the block, he goes to his God and he prays to him that all will be revealed to him so he can reveal the dream to the king. And Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are a bit like trainees almost to an extent, where they see how Daniel deals with the situations. And in chapter 3, we see them having their opportunity to stand up and be counted as one of God's own. Now, can I tell you, it's not all about big events. The story of Daniel covers about 8 days of Daniel's life. He was in captivity for 70, there you go. 8 days out of 70 years. There's some big stories there. And in this story here, Nebuchadnezzar is trying to make a name for himself. He's trying to make his kingdom secure. He's trying to get the people all on side. So he holds this grand event to bring the people under his power, to have them all worship one God, to be all on the same page, because that's how his kingdom's going to operate. And the big story here for Shadrach, for Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah is not that they make a big scene out of it and they cause chaos and they overrun the king and they take power or whatever it might be. What do these three men do? They stand. They don't cause a scene. They stand. They do nothing other than stand. They stand for what they believe in. They stand up for their God. And quite literally, they don't kneel. They stand. And that is what your God asks of you. that you would stand. He doesn't need you to go out and convert the world. He doesn't need you to go out and cause chaos in the scenes of social injustice. He doesn't need you to hold massive events or massive rallies. He needs you to stand. Last week, Phil addressed the fact that God has us in our jobs, in our town, wherever we are, for a reason. He has you there because he needs someone there who will stand. Someone who knows just how big their God is. Someone who knows that all these other things the world is throwing at them is false. That won't falter, that won't fall, but will stand. It's not much to ask, is it? What does it take to stand? Nothing. It means not going with the flow. To stand. How big is your God? Because it means standing not only when you know God's going to back you up and when God's going to do exactly what you think and hope that he will do. That if I stand in a room that people might look at me and say, wow, there's something about that fella, I need to change. Because that's awesome, isn't it? If I make a stand and people notice it, and then God uses that situation then and there to make a name for himself. Wow. But what if he doesn't? As Shadrach, as Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah said, we will stand because our God is big enough and our God will save us. But even if he doesn't, we are still going to stand. God is going to test you. There is no doubt. You will be tested. God uses the situations of your life not to make things hard on you, not to bring you pain, but to give you an opportunity to stand. When sickness comes, when the world seems to fall apart around us, the world deals with it by, oh, what do I do now? Is your God big enough that you can stand in those situations? That you can continue to realize that he is in control of all those situations? Is that the God you know? Or are there just some situations that I need to take control of myself? God is God. God is humongous. Nebuchadnezzar had a massive kingdom, but just think about God's kingdom. He created that kingdom. He brings all things into existence. He flings stars to the furthest extent of space. Yet, he wants an intimate relationship with you. And through his Son, Jesus Christ, he gave us a way to have a relationship with him. Because he knows there's nothing we can do to bring that relationship back into a good relationship. He loves you. And he asks you to stand. I'm going to ask us now to stand as we pray. Father, there are so many lessons to be learnt from Daniel. We've heard the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego so many times. We are awed by the example they give us of standing up in the face of a massive king, knowing that at the end of this, that they would be thrown to a fiery furnace, having full trust in a God who would save them, but not really sure if he would do it in the way they expected him to. Father, I pray that we will stand for you in all situations. Father, we might realize that you are a God who is in control of all situations, that we might allow you to have control of all those situations. Father, knowing that you're a God who cares for us immeasurably, in all situations. Father, help us to learn the lessons that you give to us, that you present to us in those situations. Father, we are weak, we are human, we fail, but you are a God who loves and forgives. You are our strength. Father, may you be our purpose. Help us not to build our own kingdoms, but to look at your kingdom. And that whatever we do may be for your glory. Forgive us for the times we fail. Father, help us to love one another as we all progress down this road together in building your kingdom for your glory. That one day we may be in eternity with you, sharing in all the goodness that you have. And I pray these things in your holy name. Amen.